I never thought heartbreak could come with a fever. But there I was, lying in a dimly lit room, coughing through a blanket that smelled faintly of antiseptic, and realizing the person I loved most had just walked out of my life. Maria, my partner, my confidant, the one I thought would be there no matter what, she left. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. And I was left with more than a sick body. I was left with a sick heart. I remember the exact moment I noticed it. I had been struggling for days, unable to eat, unable to move without pain. And when I sent her a simple text asking if she could come over, she replied with a single line, "I can't. I don't think I can handle this." That one sentence broke me in ways I didn't even know were possible. The person I had planned my future with, planned my life around, was suddenly a stranger. And there I was, lying in the middle of my apartment, shivering, wondering how someone could disappear when the world felt like it was crumbling around you. But life has a strange way of throwing unexpected things at you. While I was stuck in my own misery, feeling completely abandoned, someone else entered my life. Not with fanfare, not with grand gestures, but quietly. Her name was Elena, Maria's sister. She didn't know me well, at least not like Maria did, but she had this energy that felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. She appeared at my door one evening, insisting she had heard I wasn't doing well. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want comfort. I wanted Maria, and she wasn't coming back. Yet, there was something about Elena that made me pause. She didn't pity me. She didn't nag or force me to talk. She simply stayed, quietly making tea, checking if I had eaten, reminding me to take my medicine. At first, it annoyed me. I wasn't used to being cared for like this, especially by someone who wasn't my girlfriend. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, her presence began to matter. I started noticing the small things, the way she smiled when I joked despite my scratchy voice, the way she tucked the blanket around me just so, the way she seemed to understand pain without asking a single question. And then, just when I thought my world couldn't get any more complicated, something happened that changed everything. A moment so unexpected that it made me question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and healing. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand how completely broken I was when she showed up, and why her arrival wasn't just a coincidence. Before all of this, the sickness, the heartbreak, the quiet visits from Elena, my life felt simple, almost ordinary. I was a creature of routine, work, the small apartment I could just barely afford, dinners I mostly ate alone, and weekends I spent dreaming of traveling somewhere far away. Maria had been my constant bright spot in that gray routine. She wasn't flashy, but she had this way of making every little moment feel alive. Her laugh could fill a room, even if the room was just the two of us. Maria and I had met in a cafe of all places, over spilled coffee and a shared joke about how clumsy I was. I was 27, she was 26, and we clicked instantly. Everything after that felt effortless. Long walks in the park, late-night movies, sharing dreams we weren't sure we could achieve. She became my person, the one I leaned on for everything. And, honestly, I thought I was hers too. But life has this habit of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it. A few months before I got sick, Maria had started acting distant. She'd cancel plans, forget to reply to texts, or answer with one-word messages that didn't match the warmth I remembered. I told myself she was stressed with work, or tired, or dealing with her own problems. I never imagined she was quietly preparing to leave me. Meanwhile, Elena was always in the background. Younger by 2 years, a little more reserved, with a quiet strength that contrasted Maria's fiery energy. Growing up, they had been close, but not inseparable. I'd met her only a handful of times at family gatherings, and I always liked her. It felt natural to be around her, but I never thought much about her beyond that. She was Maria's sister, and in my mind, that was all. Then, the sickness hit. What started as a mild flu spiraled into something worse. Days spent in a haze of fever, coughing, and chills, unable to work, unable to focus, unable to even reach the phone without feeling exhausted. And in that weak, vulnerable state, Maria left. Her sister, Elena, somehow found out. Maybe Maria told her, maybe she just noticed I'd disappeared from social media or stopped answering texts. I don't know. But one evening, as I was staring blankly at the ceiling, she knocked on my door. She didn't say much at first, just asked if I needed help. I wanted to say no, wanted to slam the door, wanted to be left alone with my heartbreak. But something in the way she looked, genuine concern, no judgment, made me pause. And then she stayed. Elena's presence was comforting, but it was also confusing. She wasn't Maria. She wasn't the person I had loved and lost. She was someone new, someone who seemed to know me better than I knew myself in those fragile moments. And that confusion, it felt dangerous. Because in the silence of that apartment, lying sick and abandoned, I realized that my heart, fragile and bruised, was already starting to respond to someone else. Someone who wasn't supposed to matter to me at all. And that's when the real question began to creep in. Could Elena actually help me heal, or would she end up shattering me in ways I wasn't ready to face? The days passed, and the line between care and intimacy blurred in ways I wasn't ready to admit. Elena would sit quietly by my side while I coughed and shivered, and I found myself talking to her about things I hadn't told anyone, not even Maria. Childhood memories, regrets, the tiny insecurities that gnawed at me every day. She listened without interrupting, without judging, and that made me feel seen. Seen in a way I hadn't felt in months. But with every kind gesture, every gentle smile, a confusing mix of guilt and longing grew inside me. Maria had left me. She walked away at my weakest moment, and part of me hated that she could be replaced, even by her own sister. And yet, another part of me was drawn to Elena in ways I didn't understand. It was like my heart, broken and battered, was being carefully pieced together by someone who wasn't supposed to touch it at all. Elena seemed to sense my hesitation. Sometimes she'd linger near the doorway, hesitant to overstep, yet unwilling to leave. Other times, she'd make subtle gestures, bringing my favorite tea, adjusting the blanket around me, laughing softly at my terrible jokes. That made my pulse quicken. I hated myself for noticing, but I couldn't stop. Then came the first phone call from Maria. Her voice was hesitant, almost fragile, and she asked how I was. My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream at her, tell her she had no right to check in after abandoning me. But instead, I found myself answering politely, carefully hiding the fact that Elena had been there the entire time, that she had been the one keeping me alive while Maria stayed away. That night, Elena and I ended up sitting in silence, the tension between us thick enough to choke on. I wanted to tell her how I felt, but the words stuck in my throat. And I couldn't shake the nagging fear that Maria might come back. What if she did? Would everything we were building crumble before it had even begun? Every small smile from Elena felt like hope, and every imagined glance from Maria felt like a dagger. My heart was being pulled in two directions, and I didn't know if it would survive the tug of war. And just as I thought I might finally confess something to Elena, the doorbell rang. I froze. My pulse jumped. I didn't need to check who it was to know that it could change everything. The doorbell had rung, and my heart still hadn't settled. I stared at the entrance, my mind racing. Part of me dreaded opening it. Another part was strangely desperate to see who it could be. Elena, sensing my hesitation, reached out and touched my arm lightly, her eyes asking silently if I wanted her to handle it. I shook my head, forcing myself to move, my legs heavy from weakness and indecision. When I opened the door, Maria was standing there. Just like that. Her hair slightly messy, eyes wide as if she had just remembered something important, a coat haphazardly thrown over her shoulders. She looked different, not older, not exactly changed, but somehow untouchable, like she had stepped out of my life only to make sure I remembered she existed. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I wanted to scream at her for leaving me, for abandoning me when I needed her most. But the sight of her, the person I had loved so completely, made my voice vanish. And then, before I could say anything, Elena appeared behind me. She didn't announce herself. She simply stepped into the room, calm and quiet, but there was a weight in her gaze that made the air thick. The tension was unbearable. Maria's eyes darted between me and Elena, and I saw something flicker there. Surprise, suspicion, maybe even fear. Elena didn't flinch. She just smiled faintly, but there was a firmness to her smile that I hadn't noticed before. I felt a strange mix of safety and anxiety, like I was caught in the eye of a storm I didn't understand. I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell Maria that she wasn't here first, that Elena had been the one keeping me alive. But the words felt impossible to form. And Elena, quiet, patient, impossibly steady, stood as both shield and challenge. She had become the anchor in my chaos, Yet now she was the quiet storm threatening to expose everything. Maria finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I just wanted to check on you. I heard you were sick. Her tone was careful, almost rehearsed, like she had practiced these words in front of a mirror, unsure if they would be enough. Something inside me cracked. The mixture of longing, anger, and guilt made my stomach twist. I couldn't answer, not yet. I could feel Elena's presence beside me, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't helpless anymore. But at the same time, Maria's voice had awakened something raw and familiar, a part of me that remembered love before betrayal. And then, just as I thought I might lose my footing emotionally, Maria stepped closer, her hand reaching toward me. That's when I noticed it. A subtle glance from Elena, almost imperceptible, but sharp enough to warn me that this moment was about to tip the balance. Something unspoken lingered between the three of us, a secret tension that promised the next moment would change everything. I didn't know which direction to turn. My heart was trapped, my body weak, my mind screaming with 1,000 conflicting thoughts. And in that pregnant silence, I realized the next few seconds could decide everything: who I trusted, who I loved, and who I would lose forever. Just as I thought I might finally speak, Maria's hand froze midair. Her eyes widened, not at me, but at Elena, and then she said something I never expected. You knew all along?" Elena didn't answer at first. She simply stepped closer, her calmness almost terrifying. "I knew," she said quietly, "because I've been the one watching over you, even before she left. I didn't just come to help you get better. I came because I couldn't let her hurt you like this again." My chest tightened. What did that even mean? Was Elena confessing something beyond care? And Maria, her expression shifted from confusion to fury, like she had just realized the rules of this game had changed. The tension between them crackled, and I felt like a fragile observer trapped in a storm of revelations I didn't fully understand. Then Elena did the unthinkable. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the floor toward me. "Open it," she said, her voice steady. I bent down, hands trembling, and tore it open. Inside were letters, photographs, and notes, evidence that neither Maria nor I had anticipated. Secrets that would change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal. And in that moment, I realized the real story wasn't just about who left or who stayed. It was about what none of us had ever been brave enough to admit. I stared at the contents of the envelope, heart hammering so loudly it felt like it would burst through my chest. Letters between Maria and Elena, written in secret, revealing a web of emotions I never imagined. Maria hadn't just left because of me. She had been scared, torn between love and obligations I didn't know existed. But what stunned me most was Elena's role. She hadn't simply been a caregiver. She had been watching over me, protecting me, even from the person I loved most. Maria stepped closer, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong." Her eyes pleaded, searching for forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give. Elena's gaze never wavered. She knelt beside me, taking my hand, grounding me. "I never wanted to replace her," she said softly. "I just couldn't watch you break alone. And I realized something along the way. I've come to care for you in a way I can't ignore." The room felt like it was closing in. Two people I loved, or thought I loved, standing on either side of me, each holding a truth that demanded my heart. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Love isn't always simple. It isn't neat or predictable. Sometimes it arrives quietly, unexpectedly, when you've already been broken. I took a deep breath, my fingers squeezing Elena's hand. Maria's face fell, and for a moment, I felt like I was shattering everyone's expectations. I spoke, my voice trembling but firm. "I don't know what the future holds, but I know who has been here for me, and who made me feel alive again." Tears welled in both their eyes. Maria nodded slowly, a silent understanding passing between us. But just as I thought the storm had passed, Elena leaned closer and whispered something I never saw coming. "There's one more thing, something you need to know about what caused you to fall so sick in the first place." I froze, dread and curiosity crashing through me. I realized then that the story wasn't over. Not even close. I looked at Elena, the weight of her words pressing down on me. My mind raced, imagining the worst. But as she pulled a small folded note from her coat, everything began to make sense. It wasn't a betrayal, not exactly. It was a warning, a truth hidden from me until I was strong enough to handle it. The note explained how Maria's own family had discovered a rare, serious health condition I had been unknowingly carrying, something that could have worsened if left untreated. When Maria left, it wasn't because she didn't care, it was because she was afraid of the danger, afraid of the burden, and unsure how to protect me. Elena had known, had quietly monitored my health, had brought me meals, ensured I took medicine, and even communicated with doctors behind my back. She hadn't just been a comforting presence, she had been my shield. I sank into the sofa, overwhelmed by relief and a strange, bittersweet clarity. Maria stepped forward slowly. "I thought I was protecting you by leaving," she whispered, "but I see now that running away wasn't the answer." Her voice was soft, filled with the regret and love I'd thought I had lost. Elena squeezed my hand, her gaze steady and warm. "We both care about you," she said simply, "but you get to choose your path now. And you deserve to heal, fully and truly." I felt the tension in the room lift, replaced by something fragile yet beautiful, understanding. The anger, the confusion, the heartbreak, it all made sense now. And in that clarity, I realized something profound. Love isn't just about who stays or who leaves. It's about who shows up, who stands by you when life is at its hardest, and who helps you become whole again. Maria nodded, a small, genuine smile breaking through her sorrow. "I want you to be happy," she said, "even if that happiness isn't with me." And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to breathe. I didn't have all the answers yet. I didn't know where my heart would settle completely. But I knew this. I had survived the sickness, survived the heartbreak, and survived the chaos of love tangled in ways I never expected. And I wasn't alone anymore. Elena leaned her head slightly toward mine, a quiet promise in her eyes. And I understood, in that moment, that sometimes healing, and sometimes love, comes from the most unexpected places. I smiled, a real, unguarded smile, feeling a warmth spread through me that I thought I'd lost forever. Life had thrown me into the storm, but somehow, through heartbreak, sickness, and secrets, I had found my way back, not just to health, but to hope. And as I looked at the two women who had shaped this journey, I realized one truth would stay with me forever. The people who truly love you don't just hold your hand. They fight for your life, even when you can't fight for yourself. The story wasn't perfect. Nothing in love ever is. But it was ours, and somehow, that was enough.